The cold wind howled across the mining colony, whipping dust and tiny rocks through the narrow streets. Evan crouched behind a metal crate, trying to shield himself from the biting wind. He had spent the day repairing old mining equipment, but now, as night fell, he felt the loneliness more than ever. The colony was at the edge of the galaxy, far from trade routes and help, and most people kept to themselves. Evan liked it that way, quiet and simple, but tonight, something felt different. Something moved in the shadows. A faint glow caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a reflection from the colony lights, but the glow moved. Carefully, Evan stood and followed it, his boots crunching over the rocky ground. Behind the abandoned refinery, he found a small creature crouched on the rubble. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its scales shimmered softly in shades of blue and silver, and tiny wings, folded awkwardly, trembled as if from fear. The creature's eyes, large and golden, looked directly at him, and in that moment, Evan felt a strange connection. "Hello?" he whispered, unsure if it could even understand him. The creature tilted its head and blinked slowly. Then, to Evan's surprise, it spoke, its voice soft and trembling. "Can I stay with you?" Evan stumbled back, his mind spinning. Dragons were myths. Extinct. Stories told to entertain children. And yet, here one stood, alive, hurt, and frightened. He glanced around to make sure no one else was watching. If anyone saw a dragon, it would cause panic. The colony had strict rules, and any strange creature was usually taken away, or destroyed. But Evan couldn't bring himself to call for help. He saw fear in its eyes, but also something else, hope. Okay, he said finally. "You can stay. But you have to be quiet. No one can know about you." The dragon's golden eyes lit up. It hopped closer, small claws tapping on the ground, and nudged his hand gently. Evan laughed nervously. It was a strange, warm feeling he had never felt before, like the first time he held a pet as a child, but bigger and heavier somehow. Evan led the creature to a small abandoned storage room near his quarters. The walls were dusty, and the floor was littered with broken tools, but it was safe. He set down a few rations he had saved from his own food supply. The dragon sniffed at the food, then hesitated, looking at Evan as if asking permission. When Evan nodded, it ate quickly, almost ravenously. He watched silently, amazed. "I don't even know your name," he said. "What should I call you?" The dragon paused, licking its lips and blinking at him. "Lyra," it finally whispered. Evan smiled. "Lyra," he repeated. The sound felt right. Simple. Strong. Night fell, and the wind outside grew colder. Evan found an old blanket and wrapped it around Lyra. The dragon shivered, and Evan felt an urge to protect her. He realized then that this wasn't just a small creature, it was a life, fragile and important. He sat beside her, stroking her scales gently. The shimmer of her skin under the dim light made him forget the loneliness he had felt only moments ago. Evan had always been careful, cautious. He avoided trouble and kept to himself. But Lyra's presence made him feel bold, alive in a way he had never known. He thought of all the dangers in the galaxy, pirates, wild creatures, even other humans, and realized that somehow, together, they could face them. Lyra, though small, had a courage that matched her curiosity. She peered up at him with those golden eyes, and for a moment, Evan could see a spark of intelligence, almost human, hidden behind them. Over the next few days, Evan taught Lyra how to hide from sensors and wandering patrols. The colony wasn't safe for dragons, and he knew that. But he also knew he couldn't just leave her alone. She learned quickly, moving silently, perching on ledges, and watching the world with careful eyes. In return, Lyra began to explore small things around the colony, helping Evan find lost tools, pointing out hidden dangers, even finding small scraps of food he had missed. The bond between them grew stronger every day, unspoken but undeniable. One evening, Evan sat on the cliff overlooking the colony, Lyra curled beside him. The stars stretched across the sky like a river of diamonds. He thought about the stories he had heard as a child, of dragons that had helped humans long ago, guiding them through wars and disasters. He had never believed them, not really. And yet, here one was, alive and real, trusting him with her life. "Why did you come here?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked up at him, her head tilted, and for a moment, he thought she understood every word. I ran," she said softly. "They hunted us. My family, they are gone." Evan felt a pang in his chest. He had lost people before, but this was different. He reached out, brushing her scales gently. "You're safe now," he said. "As long as I'm here, I won't let anyone hurt you." For the first time in his life, Evan felt he was needed, not just for work, not just for himself, but for another being. Lyra, though small and seemingly fragile, had awakened something inside him. He realized that the galaxy was bigger than this lonely colony, and perhaps more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But he also realized that together, human and dragon, they could survive. That night, as Lyra curled beside him, Evan felt a warmth he had never known. The stars outside sparkled, distant and cold, but here in the small storage room, he felt something stronger, a sense of belonging. The lost dragon had found him, and in return, he had found a reason to keep going. Tomorrow, the colony might still be dangerous, the galaxy still unforgiving, but for tonight, they were safe. And in the quiet of the night, Evan whispered, "Welcome home, Lyra." She nuzzled him gently, her eyes glowing softly, and for the first time, Evan knew that his life had changed forever. Evan woke early, the colony still quiet under the pale light of the distant sun. Lyra was already awake, her golden eyes watching him carefully. She stretched her small wings, making a soft rustling sound, and let out a quiet hiss of contentment. Evan smiled. She was learning, growing stronger each day. But he also knew the galaxy was not safe for her. Dragons were thought extinct, and if anyone discovered Lyra, it could mean danger for both of them. Evan carried a small bag of supplies and led Lyra to the cliffs above the colony. The wind was cold, but Lyra didn't seem to mind. She leapt from rock to rock with surprising grace, her scales catching the sunlight in a shimmer of silver and blue. Evan followed carefully, making sure she didn't slip. He had learned quickly that dragons could be curious and bold, but sometimes reckless. Lyra paused on the edge of the cliff, her eyes scanning the stars above. "Do you understand the stars?" Evan asked quietly. Lyra blinked, then nodded slowly. She looked at him and said in a soft voice, "I know them. I have flown among them. I have seen worlds humans do not know." Evan's heart skipped a beat. This was not just a small dragon, she had lived, traveled, and survived in a galaxy full of danger. "You've been alone?" he asked gently. Lyra's eyes darkened with sorrow. "Yes. Alone. My family, they were taken. Hunters, machines, humans, others. I escaped." Evan felt a chill run through him. He had thought the galaxy was dangerous for humans, but he had not realized it had been just as dangerous for dragons. The days passed in a quiet routine. Evan taught Lyra how to avoid the patrols that occasionally came through the colony, and how to hide when outsiders came near. She learned quickly, hiding under crates, slipping through narrow tunnels, and even covering her tracks in the dust. In return, Lyra taught Evan small things too, how to sense danger before it appeared, how to move quietly, how to trust instincts. He realized dragons were smarter than humans often believed, and that their survival depended not just on strength, but on cleverness. One night, Evan sat with Lyra on the roof of his small quarters. The colony lay below, lit with dim lamps, and the stars stretched across the sky. "You've seen many worlds," Evan said softly. "Why are you here?" Lyra curled her tail around her small body, thoughtful. "I ran from one danger to another. The stars are full of hunters. I did not want to die alone. I wanted a place, a home." Evan felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was like to feel alone, even in a crowded colony. He reached out and stroked her scales gently. "Then stay here. With me. You're safe." Lyra's eyes glowed softly. "I will try," she whispered. "I will stay as long as you want me." The colony had never seen anything like Lyra. She explored in secret, often flying low over the buildings or perching on tall structures to watch the humans. Evan followed sometimes, hiding behind crates or inside corridors, making sure she was safe. He noticed something strange. The humans seemed unaware of her, but there were signs they felt something watching them. A sudden gust of wind, a shadow overhead, small flames flickering in the night without explanation. Lyra was careful, but her presence changed the colony in ways no one understood. One afternoon, Evan and Lyra were walking along the river that cut through the colony when a small group of children approached. They were curious, as children often are, but Evan quickly hid Lyra behind a rock. The children laughed and played, not knowing the dragon was nearby. Evan realized that the galaxy had forgotten dragons, but not completely. Stories of dragons had been told for generations. Lyra's presence reminded him that the past was not gone, it was waiting to be remembered. Evan and Lyra spent hours together each day, exploring the ruins and abandoned mines at the edge of the colony. Lyra would point out strange patterns in the rocks, old symbols that humans had forgotten, and paths that led to hidden tunnels. She had memories of other worlds, and sometimes she whispered stories of distant planets with skies of green and oceans of fire. Evan listened, captivated. He felt as if he was learning from someone much older, someone who had seen the galaxy in ways he never could. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Evan asked, "Do you ever miss your family?" Lyra's eyes grew distant, her small body shivering. "Every day," she said softly. "But I have learned, some things cannot return. I can only protect what is here now. I can only survive." Evan placed his hand on her head, feeling the warmth of her scales. "Then we survive together," he said. Lyra nodded, a faint glow in her eyes that Evan had not seen before. It was hope, fragile but real. As the nights grew colder, Evan and Lyra settled into a routine. They shared food, warmth, and quiet conversations. Lyra learned to trust humans slowly, but Evan learned more about dragons than any book or story could teach him. He understood their intelligence, their bravery, and their desire for family. And he realized that dragons were not just creatures of myth, they were survivors, like humans, shaped by a galaxy that could be cruel and unforgiving. One night, as they watched the stars together, Lyra whispered, "I have seen many worlds, Evan. Some are cruel, some are kind. But I have not seen one like this, where a human would protect me, not fear me. Where I am wanted." Evan smiled, feeling the bond between them grow stronger than ever. "Then this is your home now," he said. "We will protect each other." Lyra curled beside him, her body warm against his, and for the first time, Evan felt the galaxy was not so lonely. In the days that followed, Evan and Lyra explored deeper ruins, discovered hidden caves, and mapped out secret places where they could be safe. Each day, their trust grew, and the bond between human and dragon became unbreakable. Evan realized that dragons had always been part of the galaxy, even if humans had forgotten. And now, with Lyra by his side, he felt that maybe, just maybe, humans and dragons could find each other again, and survive together in a galaxy that had long stopped believing in miracles. The morning sun rose slowly over the colony, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Evan and Lyra were already awake, as usual. Lyra perched on a low cliff, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had grown stronger in the weeks since she arrived, her wings larger, her scales brighter, and her senses sharper. Evan packed a few supplies and followed her silently, careful not to disturb the quiet of the morning. Everything seemed peaceful at first, but Lyra's ears twitched. She hissed softly, a warning that Evan had learned to trust. He looked up and saw it too, tiny dots in the sky, moving fast. At first, he thought it was a patrol, but then the dots became ships, hundreds of them, dark and angular, their engines humming ominously. Evan's heart raced. Pirates. The colony had no defense against them. People were still starting their day, unaware of the danger approaching. "Evan," Lyra said softly, "we must hide, now." She leapt from the cliff, landing silently behind him, her wings tucked tightly. Evan grabbed her small body and ran toward the caves he had discovered with her weeks before. The pirates' ships were now closer, their weapons glinting in the morning sun. He could hear their engines thrum through the air, a low, threatening vibration. The colony's alarm system began to sound, but it was too little, too late. Inside the caves, Lyra moved quickly, almost instinctively. She sniffed the air, listening to the vibrations, calculating where the danger was greatest. Evan watched her, amazed. This tiny dragon, so small, was somehow powerful enough to protect the colony. He had always thought dragons were stories, myths from the old world. But Lyra was real, and now, her life was about to show the humans the truth about her kind. The first pirate ship fired a laser beam that hit the side of the colony, sending sparks and rubble flying. Evan and Lyra crouched low, pressed against the stone. "We have to do something," Evan whispered. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. She exhaled a stream of heat, not fire exactly, but a wave of energy that melted a portion of the incoming laser. Sparks flew into the cave entrance, and Evan shielded his eyes. The pirates shouted, confused by the sudden explosion that had no human explanation. Lyra moved with speed and precision. She darted from shadow to shadow, her small claws leaving marks on rocks as she pushed herself higher. From the cliff above the colony, she attacked the pirate weapons, shooting controlled bursts of energy that disabled their lasers. The humans below stared in disbelief. For centuries, dragons had been considered extinct, a danger to be feared, and yet here was one, protecting them, risking herself for beings who had never known her kind. Evan ran along the edge of the cave, using the terrain to guide him closer to the colony's center. He carried a small communicator, trying to call for help, but the pirate ships jammed signals. Lyra flew beside him when she could, leaping over rocks, helping him avoid debris, and striking at the attackers when they were exposed. She had become a shield, a warrior, and Evan realized that this small creature had more courage than most humans he had known. The pirates began to panic. They had expected an easy raid, a simple looting mission. Instead, they were faced with a creature that moved faster than their senses could track and struck with deadly precision. Evan could see the fear in their movements, their confusion growing as they tried to adapt. Lyra's energy blasts were controlled, careful not to hurt humans, but deadly to machines. Every strike was calculated, every movement deliberate. Evan felt pride in her. He had not taught her to fight, but somehow, she knew what was needed. Amidst the chaos, the colonists began to understand. They had been afraid of dragons for generations, believing them dangerous or extinct. But now, watching Lyra protect them, they saw something different: loyalty, courage, and intelligence. Mothers pulled children behind rocks, workers abandoned their tools, but they all watched as this small dragon defended them. Evan realized that this was more than survival, it was a lesson. Humans and dragons could live together. They could trust each other. By midday, the pirate ships were retreating. They had lost too many weapons and too much time to a creature they could not predict. Lyra perched atop the highest cliff, her body glowing faintly from exertion, wings folded, breathing heavily but proud. Evan ran to her side, patting her scales. "You did it," he said, smiling despite the dust and smoke. Lyra nuzzled his shoulder, her eyes full of relief and satisfaction. She had defended not only Evan but the colony, proving that dragons were not just legends, they were protectors. The colony leader approached cautiously, his eyes wide with awe. I thought dragons were extinct," he said. "But you saved us all." Evan looked at Lyra, who blinked slowly, her gaze steady. "Dragons are not extinct," Evan said quietly. "Some of us are lucky enough to find them. And some are lucky enough to be protected by them." The colonists slowly came forward, offering food and water to Lyra, realizing she was not a threat. They had feared what they did not understand, but now, they had seen truth. Lyra had risked herself, and in return, they had learned that dragons were not just stories. Evan looked out across the colony, feeling a warmth he had never known. The galaxy was dangerous, but together, humans and dragons could face it. That night, Evan and Lyra sat on the cliff, looking at the stars. The smoke from the pirate ships drifted across the sky, and the colony below was safe, thanks to the courage of one small dragon. Evan realized that life had changed forever, not just for him, but for the humans around him. Lyra had shown them something they had forgotten, that bravery, loyalty, and trust were stronger than fear. Evan stroked Lyra's scales gently. "You are amazing," he whispered. "The colony owes you their lives." Lyra blinked slowly, almost humbly. "I only protect those I care about," she said softly. Evan nodded. He understood. Dragons were not just fighters, they were guardians, friends, and family. And now, in this quiet corner of the galaxy, a bond had formed that could not be broken, a human and a dragon who had faced fire together and survived. The stars above sparkled, and for the first time in a long while, Evan felt hope. The galaxy was wide, full of danger, but with Lyra by his side, he believed they could survive anything. The colony had quieted after the attack. Smoke still drifted from the damaged buildings, and humans moved cautiously, repairing walls and collecting debris. Evan and Lyra sat on the highest cliff, watching the sunrise. For weeks, they had learned to trust each other, to survive together. But now, a new threat loomed, a threat not from pirates or wild creatures, but from the galaxy itself. A sleek starship appeared above the colony, its surface shining in the morning light. It was official, a ship of the Galactic Council, and its arrival sent waves of unease through the colonists. Lyra's scales shimmered nervously, and Evan felt a tight knot in his stomach. He had expected trouble from humans who did not understand dragons, but he had hoped it would not come so soon. The ship hovered silently, scanning the settlement, and a voice came through a loudspeaker, cold and commanding. "This colony harbors an illegal species. Prepare the creature for transport. Resistance will be met with force." Evan clenched his fists. He turned to Lyra, who had folded her wings tightly, her golden eyes wide. "They want to take you," he whispered. "We can't let them." Lyra hissed softly, a low sound of frustration. She had survived pirates, predators, and loneliness, and now humans, the very beings she had come to trust, might hand her over to strangers. Evan felt a surge of anger. The galaxy had no right to decide her fate. The council ship lowered a landing pod near the colony's edge. Soldiers in heavy suits emerged, weapons ready. Evan quickly pulled Lyra into a narrow tunnel he had discovered weeks before. She followed silently, her small body almost invisible in the shadows. "We have to move fast," he said. "If they find you, they will take you away. Forever." Lyra nodded, a determination in her eyes that matched Evan's own. As they moved through the tunnels, Evan realized that this was a choice unlike any they had faced before. He could surrender, and Lyra would be taken to the council, studied, or worse. Or he could fight, defend her, and risk everything: the colony, their lives, and even the fragile trust they had built with the humans nearby. He glanced at her. Lyra had grown stronger, but she was still a dragon child. He had to protect her. The soldiers found the first tunnel entrance. Laser lights cut through the darkness, scanning for movement. Evan pressed Lyra against the wall, holding his breath. The soldiers passed, unaware of them hiding above. Lyra exhaled a faint wave of heat, enough to disrupt the senses for a moment, and they slipped deeper into the tunnels. Evan realized then that dragons were not just powerful, they were clever. Lyra knew how to survive, just as he had hoped. When they reached the central cavern, Evan paused. The walls were jagged, and the only light came from a small hole in the ceiling. He looked at Lyra. "We have a choice," he said quietly. "We can hide forever, or we can face them." Lyra's eyes shone in the dim light. "We face them," she said firmly. "I will not be taken. Not again." The two emerged from the cavern carefully. The council soldiers had spread across the colony, but the humans who lived there had seen Lyra during the pirate attack. They had grown to trust her. Mothers and workers stepped forward, placing themselves between the soldiers and the dragon. Evan realized something incredible: the colony had chosen to protect her, not out of fear, but out of respect and gratitude. Lyra's courage had shown them a new truth about dragons. The council officer approached, scanning the humans and Lyra. "This creature is illegal. You will surrender it immediately," he commanded. Evan stepped forward, blocking the path. "No," he said. "She is not illegal. She is alive, she is intelligent, and she has saved this colony. She belongs here, with us, not in your labs." The officer's face hardened. "You are risking everything by defying the council," he said. "You could be punished." Evan felt a surge of confidence he had never known. He looked at Lyra, who stood beside him, her body small but strong. "We are willing to risk everything," he said. "Because she is more than a specimen. She is family." The humans around them murmured agreement. Some raised tools as a sign of defense, others stepped closer to shield Lyra. The council soldiers hesitated. They had never seen humans defend a dragon so fiercely, nor had they seen a creature inspire loyalty and courage like this. Lyra's golden eyes shone, and she exhaled a small wave of warmth, a reminder of the power that lay in trust and love. After a tense moment, the officer stepped back. "You are fortunate," he said finally. "The council will not take this creature today. But consider this a warning. One more incident, and the consequences will be severe." Evan nodded, keeping his eyes on the dragon beside him. He understood. Today they had won, but the galaxy was still vast and full of danger. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both relief and pride. That night, the colony celebrated quietly, tending to the wounded buildings and sharing food. Lyra perched on the roof of Evan's quarters, her small body relaxed, her wings folded. Evan joined her, sitting close. "You chose to stay," he said softly. "Even when it was dangerous, even when they came for you." Lyra nudged him gently. "Because you stayed with me first," she said. "Because you showed me trust, I can trust you. And because I trust you, I can stay." Evan smiled, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. They had faced the council, stood together, and won. But he knew that life would not be simple again. There would always be those who did not understand dragons, those who feared them, and those who wanted to control them. Yet for the first time, Evan realized that courage and trust could outweigh fear. Together, he and Lyra could face whatever the galaxy sent their way. The stars above glittered, distant but clear. Evan looked at Lyra, her golden eyes shining in the night. "We made the right choice," he said. Lyra blinked slowly, nuzzling his shoulder. "Yes," she whispered. "Together, we can survive anything." Evan held her close, feeling the warmth of her scales and the bond they had formed. For the first time in his life, he felt hope, not just for himself, but for the galaxy. Dragons and humans, side by side, could change the world. And tonight, in the quiet of the colony, Evan knew that they had begun that change. The colony was quiet in the early morning, the smoke from past attacks gone, replaced by a soft golden light. Evan and Lyra walked along the cliff that overlooked their home. The wind was gentle, and the stars had faded with the rising sun. 4 weeks, the colony had begun to heal, and the humans who had once been afraid of dragons now watched Lyra with respect and curiosity. She had become more than a creature, she was a guardian, a friend, and a symbol of hope. Evan smiled as Lyra spread her wings, catching the sunlight. She had grown stronger, taller, and her scales sparkled like polished metal. The small dragon who had once shivered and had now moved with confidence and pride. Evan felt a deep warmth in his chest. They had faced pirates, the council, and fear itself. And through it all, their bond had grown unbreakable. The colonists began to gather near the cliffs, some bringing gifts of food, some simple trinkets, all small ways to show gratitude. Children whispered and laughed, pointing at Lyra with awe. She nudged Evan gently, as if asking, "Is this okay?" He nodded. "Yes, it's okay. They see you as you are, not as a threat." Lyra's golden eyes glowed softly, and she lowered herself so the humans could see her better. She wanted them to understand that dragons were not dangerous, that they could be trusted. Evan had spent long nights thinking about what the galaxy had always believed, that dragons were extinct, wild, uncontrollable. But Lyra had proved that wrong. Intelligence, loyalty, and courage were stronger than fear. And now, the colony was beginning to understand that humans and dragons could live side by side, protecting and helping one another. One afternoon, a young human child approached Lyra hesitantly. She was small, shy, and clutching a toy she had made herself. "Can I stay with you?" the child whispered. Lyra blinked and lowered her head. Her scales shimmered in the sunlight as she curled around the child protectively. Evan watched, heart swelling. The question was the same one Lyra had asked him weeks ago, and now the cycle of trust and companionship continued. The colony had changed. Humans worked together with Lyra, learning from her. She guided them to hidden resources, taught them to notice dangers, and even helped rebuild structures that had been damaged by pirates. Evan realized that dragons were not just strong, they were intelligent teachers, showing humans ways to survive and thrive in a galaxy that was often harsh and unforgiving. Even the Galactic Council had noticed the change. A small envoy arrived, but this time there was no threat. Instead, they observed quietly as humans and dragons worked together. They recorded their findings, noting that dragons were not only capable of coexistence but could enhance human life in ways the galaxy had forgotten. Lyra, perched on a high cliff, watched them calmly. She did not fear them anymore, because she knew humans could be kind, loyal, and brave. Evan spent hours exploring the outskirts of the colony with Lyra. Together, they discovered hidden caves filled with ancient markings, signs of dragons that had lived in the galaxy long before humans had forgotten. Lyra explained the symbols, whispering stories of her ancestors, the dragons who had guided humans in times of war and peace. Evan listened, captivated, realizing that humans and dragons had once been allies, and now, perhaps, they could be again. As weeks turned to months, the colony became a place of wonder. People traveled from nearby settlements to see the dragon who had saved a colony, who had taught humans courage and trust. Evan and Lyra welcomed them, showing that the galaxy could change if people learned to understand rather than fear. Children laughed and played, dragons and humans side by side, exploring and learning from one another. One evening, Evan and Lyra sat atop the cliffs, watching the stars appear one by one. The galaxy stretched endlessly above them, vast and full of unknown dangers, but also full of possibilities. "We've changed things," Evan said quietly. Lyra blinked, her golden eyes reflecting the first stars of night. "Yes," she whispered. "Not just for this colony, but for everyone who will hear our story." Evan smiled, brushing his hand over her scales. He thought about the journey they had shared, the loneliness, the fear, the attacks, and the choices they had made. Without Lyra, he would have felt powerless. Without Evan, Lyra would have remained alone and afraid. Together, they had proven something bigger than themselves, that courage, trust, and friendship could change the galaxy. The humans and Lyra worked together every day, teaching each other small lessons. Evan taught humans to read the signs of danger, to trust instincts, and to see beyond fear. Lyra taught humans patience, careful observation, and the importance of loyalty. And the children, the next generation, learned the most, that dragons were not just creatures of stories, but friends, guides, and protectors. One night, Evan awoke to the soft glow of Lyra's scales. She had moved closer, sensing his presence even in sleep. He reached out, and she nudged his hand gently. "We did it," he whispered. We changed something that seemed impossible. Lyra blinked, warmth radiating from her small body. Yes. We can protect, we can teach, we can survive. Humans and dragons, together. The galaxy beyond the colony remained vast and uncertain, but Evan no longer feared it. With Lyra by his side, he knew they could face anything. And one day, when more humans and dragons found each other, the cycle of trust, protection, and friendship would continue, spreading across the stars. Evan looked at Lyra, her eyes glowing in the night, and whispered, "Thank you for staying with me." Lyra nuzzled him gently, curling beside him as the stars shimmered above. For the first time, Evan felt complete. He realized that sometimes, saving one life could change the lives of many. And in that quiet, golden light, human and dragon knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The lost dragon had found a home, and the human who had trusted her had found purpose. Together, they had begun a new beginning, not just for themselves, but for everyone who would follow. And under the endless sky, they sat side by side, ready for whatever the future might bring.